Cold War pilot says Canadians need to remember the war history that he can't forget. Starfighters.
A certain way up the climb, the bomb would come off.
What these Cold War pilots did that most Canadians don't know about. Also tonight, offensive line. Okay, good. And we say that affectionately. Also tonight, the fascinating story of the Starfighters.
We won without firing a single shot in anger.
Why most Canadians don't have a clue about their contribution to the Cold War and how this pilot wants to change that.
People are looking for drama. They've come to the right house.
All right, we're going to end tonight with a great story about the work of some pilots that a lot of Canadians probably don't know about going back to the 60s.
And even the late 50s. Yeah, the Cold War. And in the Cold War, the Warsaw Pact had a lot of divisions lined up on the border. The NATO side did not have as many troops in the ground, so one of their ways of keeping the Russians at bay were the pilots, and a lot of them were Canadian. And it's about time we start remembering these guys, and that's how our story begins. During the 1960s, this was the plane that helped keep the Soviet Union from daring to start World War III. The Starfighter was a radically designed plane that was, as the pilots called it, a missile with a man in it. It was tricky to fly, dangerous in some cases, but despite that, most everyone who did fly it loved it, especially this man, Eric Mould.
The engine had two sort of performance levels. It had military power, and then it had an afterburner. And once you cut the afterburner in, it was like a big bang in the back, and it shut up. It would climb to straight vertically climb to 30,000 feet in about a minute and a half or something like that.
Aside from the odd privately owned one, most Starfighters are now in museums or their memories on a wall. But for two of them on display in Canada, Eric and his son Amory built replica nuclear warheads that were carried underneath a Starfighter in case the Soviets attacked Western Europe.
The original version would weigh about 1,500 kilograms. It would deliver 1 megaton payload, which is considerably bigger than Hiroshima.
Obviously, the bombs were never dropped by Canadian pilots, but had they been, there was a very specific way to do it.
Well, we used to throw the bombs. We didn't drop them. We used to come screaming in at a very low level, high speed, and a certain distance back from the target. We pull the plane into a climb, and then a certain way up the climb, the bomb would come off, and the bomb had a chute, which retarded it.
After leaving the Air Force, Eric became an author and an advocate for those he served with. During the years Canadians were on the front line of the Cold War, 236 airmen were lost, and so too was their legacy.
When November the 11th comes around, we get all kinds of eulogies about people in the First World War, the Second World War, the Korean War, Afghanistan War, but nobody says anything about the people that gave their lives for the Cold War. And the Cold War was fought the way all wars should be fought. We won without firing a single shot in anger. You know, and it hasn't been replicated since, and it should have been. But those guys that died, 236, I believe it was, they all gave their lives in a pretty noble cause, and we never hear anything about them on November the 11th.
And that is something I had never heard before. And it's an excellent point.
You can get that changed this November 11th, and good for you for bringing a little bit of light to that story, too.
And it's the Air Show this weekend.
Yes.